So welcome to the Data Friday. My name is Michael Olschimke. I'm the CEO of Scalefree. We essentially have this session here every Friday, 11 o'clock Central European Standard Time, to allow you, the audience, to ask questions all about Data Vault 2.0, cloud computing, any data-driven solution. You can talk about data mining and so on, right? So yeah, everything's allowed. Use the chat here if you want for raising a live question. You can use a Q&A here in the client. You can just raise your hand, you get voice. Don't misuse it, right? You get voice for asking a question about Data Vault stuff. And you can also use a form, which allows me to essentially prepare a slide briefly. Yeah, you can also upload some pictures, which the person for today's question has done. So we have some more graphical stuff today. Yeah, if we receive multiple questions, and we have a little pile of questions at the moment, I'm cherry picking, so no worries, we'll get to your question as well. It's time box 10 minutes roughly for a good YouTube video. And if there be no questions at all, we will talk about the cluster. So let's see. At the moment, that doesn't look good that we talk about the cluster. So maybe later this year. All right, so let's get straight right in. Where is it? Ah, come on, boy. 1 second. This is for the very first time here. There you go. Okay, so this is about essentially modeling multi-temporal source data. So the source system itself provides you timelines already, type 2 timelines. And this is a specific example from SAP HRMS. And so the question now is, let me just go through it here. Could you please guide us on how to model an SAP HRMS source, which holds the data in SCD type 2 in the source itself, with an effectivity start date and end date for each change? And what's the best way to deal with time-dependent data in Data Vault 2.0? And we see here, day by day, essentially, a couple of changes in the source. There is essentially binary here with a start date, end date as a role, and there's a record status in the source, I assume, which doesn't really matter, but there's some flag as well about the last change, essentially. Then we see the record got deleted. I assume the record still exists, just with the D flag, for example, and you got different changes here, different timelines, essentially from when to when binary says developer, and then there's an upcoming change in the future when he becomes a Xeno developer and so on. So there might be even multiple records active describing this employee for a certain time, right? So let's wrap this down. Let's unbox this. The thing is this, first of all, we're looking at multi-temporal data, that's for sure. I mean, we have some start dates, end dates, some business effectivity dates essentially in the source system. That's number one. And then the other thing is, there might be multiple descriptions valid at the same time in the same batch for the same parent. That's the other problem. So we're looking at two different issues here. That's two. So one is multi-temporal source data. The other one is multi-active data. All right, so how would we deal with this? First of all, let's tackle one by one. For the first problem with the multi-temporal data, with the timelines, I would ignore the problem. Okay, many people really make the mistake that they apply these timelines too early in the process. Yeah, so lost my pen here. So the idea now is, in Data Vault, let me just draw this up. We have two phases, right? One is really about the data warehousing phase or data ingestion phase, when we load the data into the data warehouse. That's number one. So, and that's the first step, or the first phase of your loading process. And then the second phase is really the information delivery, when we deliver the final information based on the incoming data set. It's just like in a physical warehouse. The first step is when all these packages roll in. You can't just dump this on a big pile of packages or something, right? We have to organize these packages in the warehouse, right? We got all these shelves, and your job is to organize that in a shelf so we can quickly find the right package with the right content when we need the content, essentially, right? So that's the first step. So, and the thing is this: dealing with multi-temporal solutions is not a concern of the data warehousing phase. It's a information delivery concern, right? So your first job is to get the data into the data warehouse, put it into the shelf. And for that, we just ignore these timelines. Well, we load them, but we ignore the fact that it will be used for creating multi-temporal solutions during the information delivery phase. So first step is for the raw data vault, we just treat, and let me just go back here again. We just treat the timelines as descriptive data, just like the first name here or the last name and so on. Or let's say the role. All of that is descriptive data, just like the start date and end date. So your job is to get this into a satellite, for example. And just capture every change whenever there's a change on the record, when they run an update on the source system, your job is in the first step in the data warehousing phase to capture every change as a delta in the satellite. And that's easy because it's just like the first name and last name. That's what we do all the time, right? So when there's a change on the first name, we get the delta into the satellite. Same here, start date, end date. Who cares? It's timelines. It's just a timestamp, right? So descriptive data, when there's a change, capture the change as a delta. That's it. So that's number one. So the answer for the second part of the question is, what will be the best way to deal with the time-dependent data in the data vault 2.0? In the raw data vault, we don't deal with it. That's what it is. That's the best answer. That's the best approach. We will deal with it in the information delivery phase, either by using what we call a temporal pit table, which is in the book, or by pushing the timelines all the way downstream towards the client, towards the dashboard, essentially, either applying it in the dashboard directly or in the dimension view in the information mart. That's where we apply these timelines. But what you see is the more you push it downstream, the better. The easier it gets applied, the more flexible it is. You can have multiple timelines in your source data that you apply differently in parallel in information marts and so on. So just push it down. That's part number one. Second part is the multi-active data. For the multi-active data, okay, there's a couple of issues here. First of all, this is like a, yeah, I mean, you could treat this as, I mean, it is not intraday changes, right? So it's not that only one record was active at one point in time in the application, right? Because here, there's clearly two records are active at the same time, right? Because you get two different descriptions for different time spans. But the third one is not replacing the second one. They're both active at the same time. And that's why I'm not looking for the intraday changes pattern, but for the multi-active pattern. And for multi-activity, it just means you get now multiple rows in the source data set that are active at the same time, and they provide some descriptive data, just like a role or a start and end date, who cares? And you just do a multi-active satellite where you extend the primary key, because the problem is the hash key will be all the same for all records. The load date would be the same because that's day 2, right? And then we extend the primary key by some other, like what I would use is a subsequence from a staging area or from the data lake. That's where we introduce it. This subsequence is what I'm loading downstream into the multi-active satellite, into the primary key as a multi-active attribute, as it's called. And that essentially extends the primary key, and then you can capture multiple rows at the same time. And now it depends a bit. If this one is really deleted, has it been removed from the source, or does it still exist with a D flag? Is this record status in here? The status here, just a script of data. So your job is to capture every change, right? So it depends a bit on if this record exists or not, how I would deal with the loading process for the multi-active data, essentially. The goal would be that you see always the whole history you see in the last batch of the last group of the multi-active satellite for the same parent, essentially, right? So that's what I would do. The drawback is, if there's a change, if they modify something here, it will always lead to a new group in the multi-active satellite. But so it consumes some storage over time, especially in larger organizations or when you have lots of changes on these records. But it's the most efficient and most performance solution. So we trade here storage versus performance to some extent. But that's what I would do. Just multi-active satellite and ignore the fact that these timelines here are multi-temporal timelines. Just capture them as descriptive data in your multi-active satellite. So it's just a multi-active problem, at least for the raw data vault, right? But then for information delivery, we apply it in a dimension or in the dashboard itself, or using a temporal pit, which is in a book. We also discuss all this here in more length, like 2 days, in a training. We have a data vault 2.0 multi-temporal Data Vault 2.0 training, where we discuss dealing with this data, multi-active data with timelines, or CDC data, intraday changes, real-time data, always timelines, back and forth, how to apply it in dimensions, how to use a TPIT, how to apply it in dashboard, and so on. So check it out. It's also available remotely. So yeah, would be nice to see you there. Okay, cool. Good question and nice prep here. So if you have a question like this, use the form here, sfr.ee/evfriday. That brings you to a form where you can essentially phrase out your question, but also upload pictures like this one in Excel or whiteboards, drawing, team pictures, whatever works. And also check out our other webinars at scalefree.to/webinars. You'll find webinars on DBT and WhereScape at the moment. Very similar concept like this, but on a monthly basis at the moment. From two specialists at Scalefree, because I'm not a tool specialist, to be honest. I'm a data vault specialist. All right. So yeah, and last announcement again. Check out the Data Dreamland. It's coming up in October, on October 10th and 11th. In Hanover, it's an on-site conference, no remote part, right? But if you have a chance to come over, it would be nice to say hi and really shake hands and have a drink at a bar. Okay, cool. So it would be nice to see you there. And if not, hope to see you next Friday for the next Data Vault Friday session. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining. Have a nice weekend. Thank you.
Thanks for joining today. If you'd like to discuss this further, give us a call on the number below here, and we're happy to discuss this with you. See you next time. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.